Welcome to Corridors of Power. This program is brought to you by BOL Media Network and I'm your host Iqtidar Awan. We'll be conducting series of interviews with individuals of political significance and social relevance in Alberta. And one of the most relevant names right now in Alberta politics is Kerry Cundal. How are you, Kerry?
Good. Thank you very much for having me, Iqtidar. It's wonderful to be here with you today.
My pleasure. Likewise for us as well. Kerry, please introduce yourself for our audience. Who is Kerry Cundal?
Sure. So, I'm a small town girl. As they say, you can take the girl out of the small town, but not the small town out of the girl. So I grew up north in Fort St. John and then Grand Prairie. I've had the good fortune of living in Red Deer and Edmonton, and both of our children were born in St. Albert. And now I've lived in Calgary for about 15 years. So, I grew up, my parents, my mom was a nurse and my dad was a gas fitter. So grew up with parents who modeled a very strong work ethic. I grew up knowing that with hard work and determination that you could accomplish just about anything you set your mind to. I also grew up with family and friends. My background is also German and Mennonite. So many relatives, many friends. I have 100 first cousins, and I'm the eldest of all the cousins. And so grew up with family around and community. And my parents really modeled the importance of how we treat one another. And kindness, even the small acts of kindness each and every day really matter. And treating each other with, human dignity and equality and respect. Those are some of the values that I grew up with. And so I am very thankful to community and family and faith for the childhood that I had and the opportunities that I've had growing up and also living right here in Alberta.
Oh, so this tells me that you're an Albertan down to the core. Your Mennonite and German background also tells me that the zeal, the passion and aggression we need in a leader, you may be having this. Well, we'll find out.
Yeah.
So you're running for the leadership of Liberal Party.
Yes.
Why Liberal Party specifically and why Provincial Liberal Party?
So Liberal Party is, as many may know, and if they don't know, I think it's really important to know, that liberalism is, contains some of the really, really important principles of inclusion and diversity and equality. So no matter where we're from or the color of our skin or whether we're man or woman or who we love or who we are, we're all equal. And that human dignity of each individual is so fundamental to liberalism and to liberals. So that's something that really attracted me to the Liberal Party, was that fundamental belief, and also the charter. So constitutionally protected individual rights and freedoms for everybody and for people of all faiths. So that's very, very fundamental to its core for me, and that's what attracted me to liberalism. Some of the other reasons, I actually ran federally in the last federal election with the Federal Liberal Party. And one of the things that attracted me to that movement was knowing the history of Paul Martin, and he had actually left a surplus, a $13 billion surplus to the former government when Harper took over. So there was also a sense of fiscal responsibility. And then this last election, in my view, the Liberals were the only group that were being honest. They said, given our circumstances, we need to invest in infrastructure. This will require some deficit spending. And when I looked at the platforms of the NDP and also the Conservative government, they were all saying, we'll balance the budget, no problem, which in my view was dishonest. Right. And so the Liberals were being honest about what the hard choices that were needed, some of the deficit spending that was needed to invest in infrastructure. And then also, one of the things that really was a trigger moment for me when I decided to put my name out there with the Liberal Party, I received a check in the mail for $436. Now, I was working, I'm a lawyer and I worked with the Immigration Refugee Board as an adjudicator, and my husband is a spine surgeon, so we both had good incomes. And our daughter was 17 years old, so almost an adult, so she was actually involved in childcare. So we received this childcare tax benefit from the former Harper government, and I thought, is this what fiscally responsible people do? Hand out checks to people who don't need them? I'm all for helping people out when they need it. So when there are situations where there's a single mother, for example, or a single father, and they need the help, and they're in very difficult economic times, as Canadians, Albertans, we have big hearts, and we're willing to help people out. And it's a hand up, not a handout. But this idea of just handing out checks to try to buy people's votes, to me, that was just wrong.
You know, it may be hard for people to absorb political rhetorics or remember political speeches, but some of the lines are so crisp, they'll never be forgotten. One of those was when Honorable Prime Minister Trudeau said, Mr. Harper ran all deficit budgets other than the last budget, which was election year.
Yeah.
We will come towards federal politics. Having lived in Alberta for almost over a decade, I have a certain sense, I have a feeling that Albertans are, they may be fiscally conservative, but socially they are liberals. Is it safe to say this way?
Yeah, and I think you're right. There's a sense of independence among Albertans. I mean, that's been my experience. We have an independent streak. We're certainly entrepreneurial. We're business-minded. We're willing to take risks and work hard in the hopes that if we work hard and take risks, there'll be, a benefit to us, an economic benefit. And so I think you're right. We're also, as I said before, we're also big-hearted. When you look at some of the situations in Alberta, some of the tragedies, the horrible wildfires in Fort McMurray, Slave Lake, we saw the flooding in Calgary, as well as High River. Yes. And we saw people from all different backgrounds step up to help people out. And to me, that really reflects who we are in Alberta. So when we talk about, being socially liberal or socially progressive, I think that actually reflects the best in us. We this idea that somehow we're so closed off and that us versus them and some of the hateful rhetoric, it really doesn't reflect who Albertans are. So yes, we're independent. Yes, we don't like wasting money. We like to make sure that we have good investments and we get good return on our money. But we're also very compassionate and caring and inclusive and committed to diversity in our province.
Yeah, well, even though this program is going to be specifically towards provincial politics, but it's so hard to detach yourself from federal politics, and you having a very diverse set of experience with provincial and federal politics. The wedge that Stephen Harper created in last election, and he divided Canadians, allegedly divided Canadians between two different sides. The same kind of politics is moving towards Alberta as well. Do you think Alberta will receive that extreme right wedge politics, divisive politics?
I don't think so. And I think you're right. I think one of the things that turned the election, in the federal election, was that divisiveness. The more they double down, and we see it in the federal conservative race right now too, this doubling down on very hateful, racist kind of rhetoric, and Canadians reject that. And right here in Alberta, I'm also confident that Albertans will reject that too. We don't have to look too far south of the border to see what's happened in the US when you have a two-party system. And people butt heads and there's loggerheads, and it's very hard to come to any kind of practical solution or good outcomes for Albertans. And I believe most Albertans are aware of that. The reason that I'm running, or part of the reason I'm running, is if you take a step back right now and you see the NDP government, which is the incumbent, and then you see this Unite the Right under Jason Kenney. If as Liberals, if we step on the sidelines and we do nothing, we will watch a two-party system develop.
That will be a very scary scenario.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why I think it's so important provincially as Liberals that we step up and lead this centrist movement, because the question is always what is best for Alberta. And to see things deteriorate and become sort of a hateful us versus them, that would, in my mind, be the worst case scenario. So it's so important for everybody to get involved, and as Liberals to lead this centrist movement for the next election.
So I believe we are on the same page on this point, that Albertans in general, majority of Albertans are progressive, they're centrist, and I've seen your button, a very interesting button you designed. It has all the 4 colors. We'll talk about that as well. It has economy, it has environment, it has health.
Yes.
So please tell us about your Uniting the Centre movement, and how will that benefit Albertans, or how will that represent the majority of Albertans?
Yeah, so that's what's so important right now with this Unite the Centre, because, a couple of things. I always take polls with a grain of salt. That being said, I've seen polls that say 60% of Albertans are right sort of in that middle, that socially progressive, fiscally responsible that you've described. Right. I've also seen some numbers where only 6% of Albertans are a member of any political party. So out of almost 2 million eligible voters, almost 94% are not members of any political party. And yet we share some of these principles, we share this vision for Alberta, and we should be working together. So part of the Unite the Centre movement is reaching out to so many people in Alberta. That's why we're going across the province, not just Calgary, not just Edmonton. This is about all of Alberta. So we've been to Lethbridge, we're going up to Grand Prairie, we're going up to Fort McMurray, all over the province, because every Albertan matters. And that's why we've chosen, the 4 colors too. We've got, green and yellow and blue and red, because it's so important to move away from the partisanship and to focus on the issues that you've described. Healthcare. That is so important to Albertans. It's almost 50% of our provincial budget. We have to have very honest, practical conversations about healthcare and how we can deliver public healthcare efficiently and effectively. Education is another huge ticket item. So I think if we focus on our shared principles and things that are really practical, I've been saying this and I'll keep saying this. When I listen to Albertans, this is what they're saying. They're saying we are looking for honest, hardworking leaders who are going to put forward practical solutions and some common sense and are still going to be compassionate and caring about others. So when Albertans tell me that, I think it's on us to step up and make sure that we deliver that option, and not to be afraid to work with people who have maybe been NDP before, or who have been progressives who have left the PC party, the Progressive Conservative Party, or people who are independents, to say as Liberals, we are welcoming of all. And so that's the message. We want to work with everybody. We start from the position of shared principles and integrity, and if we agree on those, then we work together. So what I'm telling friends across Alberta is we're doing the opposite of what Kenny is doing. He is telling people, vote for me, vote for Unite the Right, because we are the only ones who can defeat the NDP. So the mission is defeat the NDP at all costs. That's not providing any practical solutions or policy. We're doing the opposite. What we're saying is, here are the principles, here are some of the solutions, here's the policy. If you agree, let's work together.
So it's interesting to hear that only 6% Albertans are members of any political party, which gives you lots of room, 94%.
That's right, lots of room for growth.
Absolutely. At the same time, I believe Albertans are very politically aware, and one of the steps you took towards that awareness campaign was Ask Her. So let's ask her about Ask Her. What was that?
Yeah, thank you, Iqtidar. So that was a movement. We started almost 1 year ago, Mother's Day of 2016. A group of us women, friends, thought, we found out that there was only 2 women on Calgary City Council. And then provincially, there are only about a third women in the legislature. Right. And then in the parliament, in the federal level, there are about a quarter, about 26%, so just over a quarter. And so we thought, why are women so underrepresented? So we dug into some of the research and some of the surveys and found that women don't tend to run for public office unless they're asked.
But those who run, Alberta receives them very well. Daniel Smith, Alison Redford, Rachel Notley, and in future, hopefully, Kerry Cundal.
Yeah, so what we found was if you ask women, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, right, eventually, after you ask them several times, they will say yes. And what we're really saying is you don't vote for somebody because they're a woman, but what we're asking Albertans and we're asking folks in Calgary for the municipal election is don't not vote for somebody who is highly qualified and who would be a wonderful representative in public office because she's a woman. So look at the qualifications, look at the merit, and then base it on the merit and the qualifications of the person. And we have been so excited. We have more than doubled the number of women running in this city election this year. Right. So the last municipal election, there were 9 women that ran. We now have 18 women registered to run.
That's amazing.
And we're hoping for 20. So even in 1 year, just by going around and asking all the good women that we know in Calgary to run for the city election, women are stepping up and they're running. So, I intend to do the same thing provincially, to go around the province, men, women, people from all different diverse backgrounds, community leaders, people working in business and in the nonprofit sectors, community organizations, and asking, 87 great Albertans to step up and to run, including yourself, Iqtidar.
Absolutely. Well, first off, I must thank you for starting that campaign, and I must congratulate as well, because getting 100% results in this short time, that's amazing. Numbers are doubling. Yeah. Kerry, you ran federally in last election and had a very big number of votes. You had an amazing support. What made you move provincially? I believe it's a sense of responsibility you feel towards Alberta, but I want to hear more from you about it.
Yeah. So, I was working for the federal government, and it was an incredible opportunity and experience to work for Minister McCallum and also Minister Hussein. So I worked for two immigration ministers, and we were able to do some really positive things. So I saw how important it is to be in government to affect positive change and to change the law and to create good law. So provincially, when I saw what was happening here, and this is home. So, my husband's practice, his work is here. I have adult children, but they're still very important to me. And family is here. And so very difficult to go back and forth between Ottawa and Calgary, whereas Calgary, Edmonton, and around the province, closer to home. But also seeing what was happening in provincial politics was heartbreaking. Right. To see things becoming so divisive in Alberta, and really, because of my heart of hearts, I don't believe that reflects everyday Albertans. We may see that, unfortunately, with some of the leaders, but that's not where the hearts and minds of Albertans are. And that's why it's so important for us to step up together to create this centrist movement, to make sure that we have a third option for voters in 2019 or whenever the next election is called.
Right. When you say this is home, this says a lot. Home is where heart is, so your heart is in Alberta.
That's true.
So having served with federal government, even though Alberta Liberal Party and Federal Liberal Party, they're two different franchises, but there are many issues that overlap and that coincide. So you having this experience of working with both, you think you'll be able to serve Albertans better in that regard?
Yes, I think it's very important to have working relationships at all three orders of government, so federal, provincial, and municipal. That being said, jurisdictionally, the issues are somewhat different. Healthcare and education are predominantly provincial. Yet there are things, on the economy, on the environment, that you have to have a working and a positive relationship with the federal government. And because I've worked there, I have a good relationship and with many folks who are serving at the federal level. And I'm confident that when we're successful as Liberals in Alberta, we will continue to have a good working relationship. That being said, when something is very important to Alberta, we stick up for our fellow Albertans first. We're not always going to agree on everything, and that's okay. But some of the fundamentals in terms of looking for solutions that are positive both for jobs and the economy and the environment is something that as provincial Liberals we're also very committed to. Supporting small businesses in Alberta is also something that we are very committed to as provincial Liberals.
Well, having an ability to disagree with our federal counterparts, it's what we are also looking for in our future leader. Good luck with that. Some of Albertans may have an impression that Federal Liberal Party is supporting NDP in Alberta, whereas I picked a word out of your conversation. It's a working relationship. So I think being Liberals provincially and federally, our platforms fall more in line with each other than NDP and the federal Liberals. So please clarify, is it a working relationship or federal Liberals are actually supporting the NDP here?
Yeah, no, I think you've articulated that perfectly. There's a working relationship. So I think it's very important for the federal government to have working relationships with all the provincial counterparts, regardless of which party is in power at the time, including with the United States. It's also, we may not agree with everything that the current administration in the US does, but there's a certain amount of diplomacy that's required to have a working relationship, regardless of who's in power at a particular time. So I think you're exactly right. There's a working relationship. And I am very confident, though, that as Alberta Liberals, we would have an even better working relationship. And one example that I would give would be the carbon tax. So recent polls have shown that over 60% of Albertans do not support the NDP carbon tax. There are all kinds of issues on transparency, accountability, measurable outcomes, these rebates, who are they going to? We've heard stories, reports of people receiving rebates who aren't even living in Alberta, which defeats the purpose. And a revenue neutral carbon tax, which is more in line with what the federal government is indicating, would also be something as provincial Liberals that we would indicate. And also a policy on tax that looks at the bigger picture. So we need to look not just on carbon tax, because Albertans are saying they're not willing to pay any more taxes. Right. So we have to look at small business tax, we have to look at personal income tax, we have to look at corporate tax. We have to show Albertans how we're going to save them money. And if there's tax, and any kind of a tax, We have to show them how it impacts their bottom line in a positive way, and still be very bold in saying we're science-based, we're evidence-based, we're not climate change deniers. We know we have to do something on the environment, but we have to clearly communicate to Albertans how that benefits the environment, how it reduces measurable outcomes for greenhouse gas emissions, where the money's going, and then at the end of the day, how does it in a positive way impact Albertans' bottom line. So that's one area where I think there would be even a better relationship provincially and federally.
Right. So 60% Albertans do not agree with the carbon tax, but at the same time we see that federally many Canadians may not be having a big problem with the carbon tax. Is the reason transparency per se, or another reason you could identify?
Yeah, no, I think fundamentally it boils down to knowing how the money's coming in, how the money's being spent. Is there any reinvestment of that money into renewables, or is it just going back, and is it being politicized? So you just give people money back, and then what's the point of that? And who's, some folks who are even making more than $90,000 a year are also receiving rebates. So are these people who have the financial need to get this money back? I've also heard reports from people saying, it's one thing to support the LED lights and greater efficiency in homes. Right. It's another thing to hire people to come to people's homes to install light bulbs. I mean, some Albertans are just flabbergasted. They're just surprised that the government would be, treating Albertans like we're so helpless, that we would need somebody to come to our home to install a light bulb. So I think Albertans support the environment. We want to see investment in renewables. We want to support innovation. We know that we are transitioning, and people in the oil and gas industry are actually at the forefront of some of this change in technology and renewables. So it's wonderful. We've been leaders, we'll continue to be leaders, but what Albertans do not want to see is inefficiencies, waste, and counterproductive measures that don't actually result in benefits to the environment. And I think that's, the NDP may have some good intention, but it's the implementation is where the struggle is.
Right. My next question was going to be about environment, and I guess you have answered it very well already, and you have been quoted many places saying it's not mutually exclusive to have heart and soul, so we can protect our economy at the same time the environment. Speaking of economy, if we identify three big issues with Alberta's government right now, top two would be economy and economy.
Yeah, that's right.
How do you plan to fix it?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. There's no doubt in my mind, listening to Albertans across the province, that jobs and economy are the number one issues on people's hearts and minds. We've had unprecedented job loss and small businesses close. Calgary was almost up to 10% at one point in time for unemployment. And it was 8.4% for all of Alberta, so very high unemployment. Most Albertans understand the difference between good debt and bad debt. Good debt is debt that you end up seeing an appreciable asset or some kind of return on investment down the road. Right. Bad debt is just money out the window and you never see it again. And so I don't think it's that Albertans are opposed to some deficit spending. However, we have to be able to show over a period of time how we're going to eliminate deficit spending and where the money's going to go. How are we being good stewards and making wise decisions with Albertans' hard-earned taxpayer dollars? That's the question that Albertans want. They want accountability. They want to know, I'm paying all of this tax. How is the government serving me, and how is the taxes, how are they being invested into our future in healthcare and education and renewables and even the Heritage Fund. We can't cry over spilled milk. The past is the past. Yes. However, we have to. But
it hurts when we look at Norway's Heritage Fund and their numbers. It hurts.
I know. So we can't change the past. We can make better decisions and learn from the past and do things better. So that's all part of what we need to do in terms of moving forward and on the economy and looking for those and solutions, not these either or, but we have to look at the and solutions and we have to support entrepreneurs who create jobs. We have to support small businesses to make sure that they are viable so that when they shut down, there are no jobs. So we have to be able to make sure that small businesses that create jobs can stay in business.
Kerry, you seem very clear about good debt and bad debt. So if Albertans give you, let me rephrase it, when Albertans give you an opportunity of leading them, what kind of spending you see is worth running a deficit budget for?
So some of the fundamentals are healthcare, for example.
Absolutely.
So I don't think, certainly no one I've listened to so far, and we've been listening to hundreds of Albertans across the province, no one I talked to is willing to get rid of healthcare. That being said, frontline healthcare workers are also telling me that there are many ways that we can save money. So for example, even in terms of some of the procurement process, some of the contracts for Alberta Health Services, where they're spending much more money that they need to in terms of equipment. Some of the management issues with Alberta Healthcare Services as well, there's cost savings there. Some of the diagnostics, where all kinds of tests are being ordered that are not necessary, where lots of money that's going out the window on that. And also in senior healthcare issues and home care issues, it's $1,200 a day to have somebody in the hospital. Whereas many
home care.
Yeah, home care. So many people would rather be in their homes, not in the hospital, if they have the option. So we have to look at ways to provide healthcare services that are more cost effective and are still compassionate. So I think that's going to be one of the big ones where I think we can actually do better in terms of saving money and still providing quality and public health care.
Right. So after healthcare, I think second biggest will be education. When our kids leave school and university, where they're laden with mounds of debt.
Yeah.
Any relief for the post-secondary education there?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. To me, that's also an investment in our future and in our children's future.
Right.
Post-secondary education is so important. And also opportunities in science, technology, engineering, and math. So about just over 20% of students now are graduating from those programs. We know that in terms of diversifying our economy and being world international leaders on energy, those kinds of professions are globally in high need. And we have an opportunity right here with so many talented people and so many opportunities for our young people to support that. So some of the ways we can do that is, the accessibility for student loans, some relief on interest, and repayment of student loans would be huge. The cost of it, over making sure that we're actually investing in that and encouraging post-secondary education. And I've thought too, one of the things that we need to take a serious look at are small grants for students. Sometimes students are some of the best entrepreneurs. They have all kinds of incredible ideas. And if they are in a position where they can start up a small business that's in line with their studies, then why wouldn't we support that and have small business grants for students? Support student entrepreneurship. Many young people start up their own businesses, and look out, when they had a great idea, if we support that and invest in that, I think we would see returns, economic returns, and returns in terms of new jobs created.
Right. Your vision for Alberta and your clear concepts about economy, healthcare, education, they're very encouraging. Now let's come to the question that I should have asked in the beginning. Liberal Party. Albertans seem to be, as we discussed earlier, fiscally conservative but socially progressive, as Peter Lougheed was, and his party ruled on us for 40 years, even though they deviated from his principles. Then we saw another leader following his footstep. Lawrence Decore brought us from 8 seats to 32 seats. We had pretty good times during Grant Mitchell's, Kevin Taft, even Dr. David Swan's time, and we'll talk about Dr. David Swan after that. How do you plan to revive Alberta Liberal Party, and how do you plan to strengthen its base?
So I think part of that is the clear communication and outreach that we need to do. And I am 100% committed to going all across the province, to speaking to Albertans directly, listening to Albertans with a position of understanding and listening to learn and understand. There's a misconception that Liberals are just tax and spend and leave the mortgage to the children. That's false. And I think it's on us to communicate effectively to our fellow Albertans what we stand for. And it's a lot of hard work. Democracy is hard work. And it starts from the grassroots up. It starts from each individual reaching out to family and friends and co-workers, colleagues, and having these one-on-one conversations, having the coffees and across the province, so people know what it is that we stand for. And then if we all are on the same page, once we articulate these principles, when you have these conversations, and I was on another radio station not long ago in Edmonton, all of a sudden people were replying on the radio station, oh, well, this feels strange. I guess I'm voting Liberal. But part of that is the hard work of making sure we reach out and explain and articulate and communicate exactly what it is that we stand for, and overcoming some of the misconceptions.
Right. Reaching out seems to be the key. We have our interim leader, Dr. David Swan, worked with him in past few years. I think he is one of the most learned politicians, one of the most experienced politicians in Alberta politics, and party could not tap into his potential completely. Part of the reason, funds. Money talks. We need to get your message across.
Yeah.
How do you plan to raise funds for the party?
Yeah, so we're doing that as we speak right now. We're doing the fundraising that is necessary. You're right. We need to do the fundraising, but I just want to make a comment too that you've highlighted with Dr. David Swan. This is someone who was the only Liberal elected in the Orange Wave in the last election.
With a big margin, 7,000 votes.
Yeah, and I am so sure, based on listening to his constituents, that he was elected because of the respect and the trust that he earned from his constituents. I have no doubt about that. And that's something that we have to demonstrate, that we are willing to do the hard work and to listen and to reach out to earn voters' respect, because it wasn't about labels or title. They knew him, they respected him, and they trusted him, and he had earned that. And so I think that's also what we have to bring to the table, is to show and to demonstrate by our actions to fellow Albertans that like Dr. David Swan, we need more of him in the legislature, not less. And this is why we're doing this. This is why I gave up a position working with the federal government to do this full time. Because to me, it is so important that we get more people like Dr. David Swan in the legislature, that the people who are willing to, if it's a good idea, it doesn't matter who it came from, whether it was NDP or whoever. If it's a good idea, we support it. If we disagree, we don't disagree to be disagreeable. Let it be for good reason.
True.
And if we can improve something, then we offer the solutions. That very reasoned, balanced, evidence-based decision-making is what Dr. David Swan brings each and every time to the legislature. And I am very passionate about making sure we get more people like Dr. David Swan in the legislature in the next election.
Great. Kerry, this conversation has been very educating for me, and I'm sure our listeners and our viewers, they'll find it very interesting as well. Any message you want to give in the end?
Yeah, thank you, Iqtidar. So it is so important to get involved, in politics. Democracy is hard work. We can only do this if we work together. So I would invite everybody to check out the website. It's kerrycundal.com. It's Kerry, Cundal, Cundal.com. I would also encourage everyone to buy an ALP, Alberta Liberal Party membership, before May 15th. So the time is running out. So please buy your membership. And then voting is online, so try to make this very convenient for everybody. At home, you can vote between May 27th and June 3rd. So please get your membership, tell your family, tell your friends, join us in this centrist movement. It's a very exciting time and a very challenging time, but I strongly believe if we work together, we can do this, and we can build this centrist movement for the next election. So thank you, Iqtidar. It's been such a pleasure and an honor to be here with you. Thank you.
Likewise, Karry. Actually, pleasure's been all ours. Folks, viewers, thank you very much for walking through the corridors of power with us and Kerry Cundal. Looking forward to more shows showcasing other personalities, other political personalities of relevance with you. Till then, take care. Goodbye.